Constructing your life is about much more than just building a bank account. Each week, join real estate entrepreneur and mindset coach Austin Linney as he interviews guests who are constructing their dream lives and impacting the world around them on a daily basis. If you're an entrepreneur or wanting to start a business, or you just want to hear motivating stories of how others have overcome the odds, you are in the right place. And now for your host, Austin Linney.
Guys, welcome back to Construct Your Life. You know, I really appreciate this guy coming down off of his ivory tower from his multiple businesses. It only took me a year to get him on the podcast. My boy, my brother from another mother, Ruben. How are you doing, my man?
Hey, man, I am good and I am blessed. I can't believe it's been a year, man. Stop it, man. You're making me feel terrible, but we had to make it happen. Look, we had some bumps on the road. And we got across, we had some technical difficulties, some weather and some pandemic. We got through it, though. We're here.
So, this is interesting because you're so multifaceted and you do so many things. I'm going to let you tell the audience who you are, where you come from, what you do, and then we'll kind of see where it goes from there.
That's a good question. So who am I? I'm a learner. I'm an active learner for sure. Actively learning. And the reason I say that, Austin, to the audience is because I'm surrounding myself with guys like you from different walks of life, right? You're a big mindset guy. Okay, I got a mindset guy on my phone. Marketing, real estate. I mean, you name it. So I'm a learner. When I say I'm a learner, I'm like not your traditional like at school learner and student. It's more like active, get in contact with the people who are doing it. And so just to get more context, I grew up, I was just having this conversation with someone else yesterday. I wasn't the guy who was like selling lemonade at a lemonade stand. And I was always a built entrepreneur. I always find that interesting. I'm like, dude, that wasn't me, man. I was given a script. I went with it. I got good grades. Like I was lined up, I was listening to what the folks were telling me. And then I started to surround myself with other people who were kind of showing me a different blueprint. And then I followed those people, got mentors, I got friends. Your environment is important. That kind of flipped that script on me. Oh, there's another route. Like you don't have to always do it that way. And so, yeah, I wasn't like born like an entrepreneur. And I wasn't born like a real estate investor. I wasn't born anything. It was more like, oh man, this is interesting. Let me tap more into this. And now I'm here. So I guess in a high level here today, I'm a real estate investor. I own a marketing agency and I consult as well. I have an IT background. So I've been consulting for quite some time. And I use actually that knowledge and I bring it inside my businesses. A lot of these corporations have they're systems driven. We're entrepreneurs who became corporations. And I've actually used my experience in that world to bring it into the startup space or the business space and everything from our short-term rental to my business. And so I'm systems driven, active learner. And I'm very thrilled to be on this podcast with a guy like you, Austin, and the people who are here to construct their lives, man.
What do you think? See, I'm coming at you from 90 different angles on this one. I'm going to get you raw and fresh in the real.
Yeah, let's talk real.
What do you think keeps people on that scripted path that they're told? Because let's be honest, the other path, the entrepreneurship, the investor is the harder one for sure. Why do you think people stay in that realm for so long? Maybe what their parents told them they need to do or whatever, like, because there's a lot of young people that listen to my thing, that maybe said, this is what we need to do. What keeps them stuck in that little rut of just heading down? Not that it's a rut, but just not going after what they want.
I think because you don't know any better, man. Like, I think one of the things I was blessed with, and I kind of accepted the blessing, is I had roommates when I was in college. I went to college, right? I did the whole thing. I was a varsity athlete as well, so got a lot of discipline from that. But I got exposed to it, Austin, right? And when I say that, I'm like, hey, what are you doing online? Oh, yeah, I'm just shooting a video. What are you doing on video? Oh, I'm doing YouTube. What is YouTube? Oh, I'm doing YouTube ads. YouTube ads. Okay, cool. So when I was brought up in my house, I was just like, okay, study, do this, become that. And now I got this guy who's making money with YouTube ads. This is back in like 2000 and what was it? 2000, maybe 10. So I'm like, okay, can you show me a little more? And then, oh yeah, I'm going to this underground event. Underground event, yes, a bunch of entrepreneurs. Okay, cool. So I go with them, and I'm like, I got people who look like me who are doing like talking about some crazy stuff I've never heard in my life before. And so to answer your question, Austin, it's like you don't know any better because it's your environment. Your environment is what you know. Like there's so many things I look back now and I'm like, damn, like I don't know shit. You know, like I didn't know this existed. And then there's just so many levels to that. So I feel like if you don't have like this curiosity bug and you're not willing to be like, okay, is there another way people are living? Because this is a construct your life. Like you might have eaten a certain amount of diet and you think that's healthy. And then you go to your friend's house and it's like, no, this is what we eat. And then we're like, okay, I didn't even know that you could make that with those ingredients. So I think to answer your question, Austin, it's exposure. And I feel like we're so blessed because exposure, even during this pandemic, if you're listening to this, it's literally March 31st, 2021, is just a click away. Like turn off anything that's not serving you and tap into some podcasts like this where you can be like, oh shit, maybe I should think differently. It's a YouTube away. It's a Google away. Like it wasn't like this when our parents, and that's the crazy part too. Like I'm talking about my parents, my generation, right? They're in their 60s, right? To give you guys some context. And so it's like, they didn't have, like, it was hard to get exposure because all you had maybe was the library and the encyclopedia. And your people. Now I can be across the world and type in how to invest in real estate on YouTube and be like, God, these guys are doing this stuff. You know what I mean? So that's what it is, Austin. I feel like now if you don't have the curiosity bug and you can't like watch a documentary, get insight, because you got to plant the seed first. It's not going to happen right away. You got to like change your mindset. You got to be aware. And then you go deep down a rabbit hole, which is what I call in my brand experimenting.
Yeah. No, I love that. There's so many ways to go with that. But what's interesting is the reason, I touched on 2 points there. The reason they don't is because they're worried about looking bad. Like we've become a society of everything's got to be perfect out of the gate. Like you can't try, you can't do anything. Because I'm letting you know right now, right? There was a report out a while back I read that a millennial has 19 different careers before he's done. And so the question that you have to ask yourself is if you're not curious and you're living in a fixed mindset, it's going to be a sad and lonely world. Because I was listening to Jim Quick the other day and like some other guy, and he was saying that the new currency in the world is not money. It's not anything. It's how fast can you learn something? Yeah. Because that's how fast shit's changing. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like blockchain, NFT. Oh I don't even know what half this stuff is.
Dude, but so it's funny. I just told you I got my point, and this is powerful right here. This is what we're talking about, Austin. I got a guy who's like, yo, Ruben, man, you know so much about real estate, which I don't. I'm still learning. He's like, you got to teach me the game. And guess what? I have a call after this podcast where he like helped me get control of my wallet on crypto and all that. Cause I had money that I invested before, but I didn't know how to do it. I had a friend who was handling it. And I was like, Ruben, you got to control your money. And so that's the thing though. Like that's power right there. Like you got to have somebody in your backyard that's doing so many other things that you can't do that you don't know. And maybe you do it with them and they can kind of guide you. You know what I mean?
Well, think of it this way. Me and you are the same person. And maybe I'm a weird person when it comes to this, but when I worked at restaurants when I was younger, this is a true story. I used to memorize. Now I have a weird memory, like kind of scary almost, but I used to memorize what everybody did at the restaurant that worked there. And when I mean what everybody did, like I remember if that person went to church on Wednesdays or that person had dance on Wednesday or football practice, because when I wanted to get off of work, I wanted to ask one person. I didn't want to ask 30 people. And so what's interesting is I watch my networking. It's like almost I go out every week and fill up a bucket I don't have. Right? It's like, what do I don't have? Well, I don't have a Portuguese goat farmer. Well, I'm going to go search for that this week. Like, because when you ask me, when you say, this is what I need, I go, okay, hold on. Give me 5 seconds. I got it. Boom, boom. Here you go.
Oh, dude,
because
that's crazy.
Because I don't, because if you spend a week looking for that one person or that one thing you need, you're wasting precious hours. And now I just go straight to the match.
Dude, it's so funny you say it because I'm like, as we know, guys, your host, Austin, is a crazy super connector. I'm like, how does he know these people? And like, it's so crazy because you've been working at this for a long time. Like it's a muscle that you've kind of created. And I think it's so powerful in this day and age. to the conversation we're having, we don't have an information problem. We have a packaging problem of where to, like, there's an influx of information. There's almost too much information. How can you package it? And for you, it kind of goes back to like one of my TEDx talk that I had, like, stop asking how can I and start asking who, like, who can solve that problem. And if you have that power, like, and I'd love to like flip the script and ask you how you develop this power, man. Cause I think it's powerful. I think it's like, they say who you know, but it's who you know knows you, and who you know that you can refer to then be of value to somebody else, man. That's crazy.
Here's my thing. There's two qualities that my mentor believes in and I believe in too. But more importantly, I have this weird thing about me. I hate to be asked. I don't like to be asked to do stuff. And so the less friction, like, it's like this weird thing about me. Maybe it's the rebellion side of me. So like, I just go ahead and like, like, if you can imagine like me as a high-end bartender and waiter, like I was a fucking G, like I made real money because I would know what the guests needed before they needed it. And I kind of brought that into this world. But here's the deal. True story. My mentor believes this, lives by it. He's like, this has got him ahead. Likability is this secret weapon that nobody talks about. Dude, let me tell you something. Everybody comes back around. Meaning you better be very careful who you're pissing off. Not change. It all comes full circle always. And so if you're likable and people want that energy around you, like my buddy, right? He does breath work and some other stuff for entrepreneurs. He said, I want you to go back and I want you to look at Tony Robbins' YouTube videos. And I was like, what? And he's like, go look at like 10 videos by Tony Robbins. I'm like, what are you talking about? He's like, tell me one instance when Tony Robbins has his chin down ever. His chin is up. His chest is out because he's allowing that energy to come in and he's lifting the people up in front of him. So when I have a coaching client, when their chin's down, they feel bad about themselves. And so I raise my chin and lift my thing up and they gradually come up to my energy. And when they move into a new energy, they can shift. You can change. And so you have to do this, and you do this. You bring great energy to any environment, adding value. You're not taking. Like we were just reading about this the other day. If you're taking energy, right? Like it's going to be a very lonely world for you. But if you're giving and giving, then people are going to find a place for you. And so when you find this new world and you're like, damn, this underground, this guy's making YouTube apps. Like what shifted in your life? Like where did you go first when you were like figuring stuff out? Because something I love about you is like you're 100% curious, which allows you to never leave a stone unturned. And so that way you're going to be able to, I call it a Swiss Army knife. You're going to be able to handle a couple different things. In that same context, you also have to learn how to be restrained from that too. That's true, and so like, when you started figuring out these options in college, like what kind of was the first business that you dove into?
Okay. So I love that question, man, because, I went in with the gift, and it's interesting because so I'll be straight up. It was personal training where I was like, man, this is crazy. Like, I'm really helping people, right? And I feel like you can start from there because I think sometimes we have all these ideas and it's like, at the end of the day, it's like, okay, what problem you're solving? And so for me, it was like the lowest hanging fruit. I was an athlete. I want to get my certification. I've always wanted, I love the body, by the way. Like, guys, I was going to be a chiropractor, man. Like, I love like physical, like all that, the body, mind, soul. I've always been, training, taking care of my body and all that stuff. And I started helping others and I started getting that feedback of, man, like, Ruben, you changed. And it's crazy because it's like, I'm a young guy, like, you changed my life. I'm like, what are you talking about? Like, I'm just helping you work out, man. Mm-hmm. And they started saying that. And then I started to see a different side because I was going to class, I was going to school. And then I also, when I had that personal training business, it was like, in school, right? Like I was literally like training like faculty, staff, like they knew me, like highly respected professors. Like I was the personal trainer on campus, man. And that was the plug because I was connected to everybody. Like sometimes be like, some my guys would come in like, yo, who are you training right now? Like, some fit girl would be like, oh, like it was just it was like I was like, yeah, man. It was like the plug of campus. I felt like I was the shit. But more importantly, I've always wanted to kind of like teach and speak. And so it kind of gave me that fulfillment of like, yeah, like I need to stay on top of my game because when I'm on top of my game and I'm like knowing more about the body and I'm putting training things together, I'm actually benefiting people. And then I created a YouTube channel. You guys can check it out. Ruben Kanya. I'm still on that YouTube channel still exists. And I was putting out content. And so it's funny that like the whole podcasting, the thing is, it's a muscle, right? Because I've been speaking in front of camera for over a decade now.
Yeah.
And so I've been doing this. And so that was the first thing where I got like, I had a little sense of like freedom because I was like, it was on my schedule. Hey, Ruben, when are you available? I'm like, okay, cool. And then it kind of went from there. And then when I graduated, I was like, damn, I'm going to leave all these people behind. So I put a little program together, some digital program. It didn't take off too well, but that was like the first taste. And then to answer your question, Austin, I just went deeper with the person who was already doing it, right? So then that didn't stop there. Like the twins, as I call them, are still my buddies today. They still do my site. Talk about these deep-rooted relationships. They were like, yeah, we're going to this conference called Traffic and Conversion. I'm like, what the hell is traffic is conversion? Traffic? Like, what do you guys? No, it's like traffic and conversion, like digital marketer. So my biggest advice would be like, and I want to do this too, because I'm more into the real estate space and marketing space. I want to go to an environment that I'm really not used to. Like that's my goal for this year. I know conferences were kind of like shut down and everything. Like I'm a big personal development guy, but I want to go with people who are doing something that will completely enlighten you and is completely not in sync with what you currently know and do. Like I want to go to like an art gallery or something or an art conference, like some weird, because you're going to get some insight and be like, oh wait, why don't I implement that in my business? So to answer your question in short, I just went deeper. And then you asked me about what was that kind of like that next pillar. I got introduced. So personal training was the first one. The next thing was like e-commerce business. I learned like Facebook ads. We started outsourcing products, drop shipping. Like it was that's when I started learning about systems and all that. This was completely off of the track record of like going to school. I've gone to school for like health science and like minor in economics. Like those things are not the same. And I think it goes back to our point of being curious, because once you're curious, you can kind of go off of the grid of like, it doesn't be like, let me leave you with this because I'm rambling a little bit. But the problem that I have, like when it comes to like the school system, it's the whole, what's your major? What are you studying? Because you've already pigeonholed yourself into this is where your energy should go. It doesn't allow you to like, okay, but like I want to do something completely off different. You have to just focus on these minors, these majors, these electives, these that, and you're not learning anything else. And we know that the world's changed completely now with all this information of things you can learn. And again, maybe degrees not being as valued as they once were. That's another argument to have or another discussion to have. But my whole thing is go with the experts who are already doing it, hold their hand, go deeper, go where they're going, consume what they're consuming. And that's how I kind of went down these different avenues of businesses. And I'm glad to share how I got exposed to other new ones and how I was able to now identify and be like, hey, this is what I really like. And this is what I'm going to double down in because it matches with my fulfillment, my personality, and my core values.
We as a society love a good identity. We love a good box, and an artist per se has a profile, long hair, smokes a little weed, maybe wears a hat and a poncho, right? It can't be me, right? Can't be me. And we live this society loop of absolutes. This is the only person I'm supposed to date. This is the only job I'm supposed to have. And it pigeonholes you and it takes you away from wonder. From curiosity, right? And let's just say I'm a little bit of a different coach, okay? And so sometimes the personal development space like drives me fucking crazy. Like it feels like
development, you said?
Yeah, it's like too much. Like it feels like a noose around my neck, right? And so what I do and what I tell my clients to do is read a book called Big Magic. And it's amazing, right? And she's the one that came up with Eat, Pray, Love. And she tells a story. I'm about to blow you away with this. She tells a story. She's in Minnesota. She comes up with this idea of this 1903, gold miner in Argentina that like meets somebody. This was like a real gold mine, and like meets this guy. It was like this random, like off the cuff. She would never know anything about it, right? And so she's writing other books, and she sits on it for like 3 or 4 years. She meets this woman from California who's another writer who's a friend, and says they just meet each other. They like each other's work. And she goes, I need to tell you, the girl from California, I need to tell you about this story I'm writing. I love it. It's a 1903 gold miner from Argentina. And the woman goes, what the fuck? And her explanation of this was, art is a vessel that moves through you. Your craft is something. And when you don't use it, it goes to somebody else. And that's the only explanation that she can have. So if you're so pigeonholed, if you let society pigeonhole you of what you would do, you're actually not giving your craft or your art to the world. Yeah. And so like with your curiosity, right? These roads that you go down, you're tapping into aspects of yourself that on the surface might be dead, and you have no idea what you might awaken, and it shifts how you feel, right? And that's where people get so caught up in these identities of like, I'm a real estate investor. Like I've actually we started Brain Dump, the other podcast, because we don't want to talk about real estate. Because exactly. And so like the same thing with the real estate space. The real estate space can be very myopic. Like I love me and you just like business, like in whatever that business is. And so when you're going down and you're pushing farther the personal trainers, dude, I can only imagine you were doing digital videos back when I don't even know what they look like, but
man, some of them are brutal and some of them picked up too. And I was just like, what? And yeah, it was just, and it's so funny, man. Yeah. Check it out, but I'll send him to you. It's hilarious. It's still up there though. Those digital assets still exist, which is a beautiful
evergreen content.
Exactly.
So what'd you do next?
And so next it was, so then it was a combination of the e-commerce business, which I touched on a bit. And I'll tell you one thing about the whole, the reason why I think it's important to literally, I call it experimenting, but really it's just exploring, right? Mm-hmm. So I went to that business, and there's a lot of lessons learned. That business, and I think the lesson learned, I speak about this with my friend all the time, is like businesses and even careers, because you talk about 18 different careers, they can just be stepping stone to the next adventure. Mm-hmm. They don't have to be I think sometimes you go into it like, this is what I got to be for the rest of my life. And I think, obviously sometimes you feel that it's structured that way, but it's just a foundation for the next step. And let me just make this point before I go on to my next point. I've mentored some people who've come out of school because I'm a big part of my alumni, and I like helping the young bucks. And I always tell them, man, they're always like, oh yeah, like, I have this major and this and that. And I always tell them, like, dude, like, what did you learn from this experience? Like, what skill set can you bring from this experience to another place? Because if people like, let's say, even if you worked at like, who knows, McDonald's, it doesn't matter. You learn some customer service, you learn dialogue, you learn communication, you learn something. And so that's what should be, if you're talking resume and you're not talking entrepreneurship, it's like, what experience can you bring to the next job that will also need that experience? If it's customer relations, if it's just retention rate, keeping people in-house. So that's one big thing. And the reason I'm bringing this up is I realized that, in the e-commerce business, so I learned Facebook ads, which is fantastic because I'm launching campaigns tonight, and I had my buddy who does ads. He's like, "Oh yeah, I remember this stuff." So it kind of gives me that knowledge of awareness too, because when you know things, when you delegate them, you also can't get kind of ripped off as well because you have some form of knowledge. But most importantly, you identify and you're like, "I don't really like this, man. Like I'm behind a computer, like running campaigns." Doing fulfillment orders. But I had learned an interesting model, like how to work with virtual assistants. Well, guess what? I work with virtual assistants today. So those are all pieces that I took. But at the same time, I know that I'm not a guy who wants to be behind campaigns, no matter how much money we made, right? We had really good months. We didn't exit the way we wanted for that business because we kind of lost interest, which is what happens when they say, do what you're passionate about. That's another conversation that I think we throw around these phrases. It's not don't do what you're passionate about. It's to do where there's a demand in the marketplace. That's really important.
Also, I sent you that video. You don't chase
exactly. Thank you, Austin. It comes full circle. You sent me that video and it was powerful. Let me make a note on that. It was like, don't do what you're passionate about, but do what gives you energy. And I was like, damn, Austin, that's so good, bro. It's so good. It's so true. So that's number one. But number two, let me combine these thoughts together because I'm stacking on a lot here. Get a lot from these experiences. Identify what you actually really like and gives you energy. But then these experiences build some skill sets and some form of knowledge that you can plug into the next journey. Right. And so that's what I did. So I'm like, damn, this e-commerce thing is not for me. Made some good money. And it wasn't really good money. It was good revenue. It wasn't good profit at the end. I was like, damn, the margins are crazy. But like the margins were not that crazy. Excuse me. The gross was big. It was like, damn, we got like a lot of money coming in. But it was like, oh, shoot, cost of goods sold. Oh, wow. We didn't bring money. Mm-hmm. So another business lesson learned. However, I realized I'm like, I need to be in touch with people. I need to be on things like this. So what do I do next? So then I went into real estate. But that experience allowed me to know what I didn't like. And I think what happens is we don't experiment enough. And sometimes our lives aren't structured or constructed in a way that will allow us to build enough experiences for us to know what we don't like.
No, I agree 100%. And what you told me the story, I don't know if it was our first meeting or whatever, but you told me the story about when you got into real estate, you're just like, I'm just going to start filming everything. And it kind of like, it was wild, right? Like you just like, well, I'm just going to tell my journey. Like, I'm not worried about what the content is. And like, I'm going to do a podcast. And like, I'd love for you to tell people that story because I love it.
This is probably one of my favorite things that I'm probably the most proud of. And the biggest lesson I would probably like leave on this earth is that little voice inside your head, like that very thing that is telling you, you're not ready, is the very same thing that's going to propel you forward. And so what do I mean by that? Let me give you a little context to that story of what Austin's talking about. So I went to Atlanta. I'm like, let's get started in real estate. At first in real estate, there's a lot of different umbrellas to go through. So I started with a lot of different things. I did wholesaling. I became an agent, got my license, listed homes, sold homes. I'm like, I don't really like the whole agent thing. It doesn't matter if I sell a home for $1 million. I don't want to be just, hey, did you get the deal? Like, it's just not my thing. Like, there's a lot of good things from it, but like, I wouldn't want to be $1 million kind of agents that you see. It's just still, it's not my thing. But guess what? I tried it. Right? Yeah. I had a listing. I've done it. So again, I got experience. Now going back to I'll get to the podcasting thing in a bit, but I think there's another pillar in there. So I started when I wasn't ready, and I put something up. I on Bigger Pockets. I'm like, I said, realtor for the investor. Here's the thing: most people think that, oh man, but in order for me to do something, in order for me to help someone, I need to have experience, right? That's bullshit. You just need to find a way to add value to them. And the thing is, most people think that someone's going to ask you, like this might happen on $1 million home or something like that. Like, have you ever sold other homes like mine? And even then, there's a workaround for that. Like, that's nothing. So in all the people that I helped, I said realtor for the investor. I didn't own a piece of real estate at all. And I'm calling myself the realtor for the investor. But guess what? Now I'm working with investors and I'm learning from them. Never did this ever happen where they stopped the car and like, hold on. How many pieces of real estate do you own? Never. And you think that, right? You go into life, you're like, oh man, like what if they ask me this, or what if no one cares? So I decided to launch a podcast, right? And this is what you were saying, Austin. And I was like, man, I'll host a podcast when I have like 100 units under my belt. And I'm like, that when I have this, then I'll do that. If you ever find yourself, your mind telling you when I have this, or when I become this, then I will do that, you need to just destroy that thought, because that thing is just a limiting belief that you've told yourself. And we do this all the time. I even find myself doing that too. I'm like, I don't need this right now. I can just launch today. I'm telling myself I need that because it's a crutch, right? Like it's a fight or flight response. Like, no. We're going to be good when we have the money, or when, right? You fill in the blanks. So I was like, I want to launch a podcast, a real estate podcast. Why? Because again, proximity. I want to get close to people. When I launched that podcast, I didn't even own a piece of real estate. And my first guest was someone who had 300 million assets under management. And I'm just like, it was just like real estate experiment. And the crazy part is, guys, get this. Start when you're not ready, because it's a momentum. I've said this before. It'll help you deliver. If you're a sane person, if you say you're going to do something, then you're forced to do it even when it's not there. I didn't have a podcast when I pitched this guy. I was just like, hey, we'd love for you to come on podcast. He's like, okay, this date works for me. And I'm like, oh, shit, I got to get a podcast together. But the lesson here is like, start when you're not ready, because the human, it's just your human nature. Like, it's there to protect you. That like, nah, Austin, you're not ready yet. Austin, no, when you're more secure. It's meant to protect you. Your brain is a protecting mechanism. So any challenge is seen as something that is not going to protect you. It's different. And so the lesson learned in that situation was that led on to relationships that led to deals, partnerships, clients. I opened up an agency from that action. Because if I didn't do that, I wouldn't have met the people. I actually wouldn't have met you, Austin, because you came through. It's unbelievable, the things that happen. And the thing is, you can't predict that. You can't. You just have to take that step ahead, and then it leads to something else. And again, the whole curiosity step, you have to open up that door, and then you see what's on the other side. And then you take the steps, and then you open the next door, and then you turn left or right. And then you learn from something, and then you open another. Then you get a set of keys. Now you have keys to a lot of doors. And then you meet people who can give you a ladder. You meet people who can open up other doors for you. Like, that's the power of being curious and starting when you're not ready.
Yeah, my boss in private equity space, he said, don't you ever lie about where you are. It's not worth it. He says, and so like, I just tell people straight up. Like, now I'm like, this is where we're at. Like, this is where we want to be. Okay, great. Hey, you ever built a house before? No. Well, we're excited to build one for you. And he said, guy said, sounds good to me. But hear me out. Hear me out with this. My business partner has, but here's what he's been calling people, right? And they're on a 1 year wait for building. And I go, or you can just become our timeline. He goes, I like that. And so like what you're saying and like just going and everything, ask enough questions to get to understand the friction point of said person. Like, as my mentor would say, like build the airplane while you're flying. Like at some point, the action is going to beget things that you don't even understand. Like the podcast for me, like I love everybody that listens to it. I love like every response I get, every review. And that's great. And it's also a straight up networking tool for me. Like that's the way I positioned it. Totally. And so like, it's like, I look at it and I go, it's been a year next Tuesday. And we've had, 320, conversations with venture capitalist guy and real estate dudes. And like, how long would it have taken me to amass this big of an audience? And that's why I love that you're like, hey, I'm just going to film it. I'm going to figure it out. And like, here's what's wild is like through like getting that guy on, you didn't even have podcasts. Now you run a podcast agency, which is hilarious on so many levels. It's not like you went to school for it.
No, it is hilarious, right? And yeah, man, I think that's powerful. And I think the whole thing, I mean, you guys can check my Instagram, The Real Estate Experiment, and you can scroll all the way down and check my first post when I was like, hey guys, I'm going to start documenting my journey. And you're going to have to scroll down a long time because I've been doing this, consistently for quite some time, just documenting every day, right? Like we're going to make sure that we get this, that, I'm on a podcast right now with my man, Austin. Boom. Documented. It's in the books, right? So, but no, it's kind of it's interesting because you don't really know what what awaits. I think you set some goals, but some things you can't plan. And I think along those goals that you set, some opportunities will arise. And if you're open-minded and you're open for, like, if you're malleable, flexible, and you're open, like, you have to see these opportunities you won't see if you're not open to it, right? I think that's the most important.
Yeah, because at the end of the day, the no, or the calamity, or the loss of a investment, or the loss of a business, what you don't understand in the big picture scheme, actually moved everything out of the way so you would be available for the opportunity that is available. So
Austin,
go ahead.
No, Austin, I want to make sure this didn't slip through the cracks. You said a really important thing about honesty, and I really want to touch on that for a second, man. Like, it's so cool and so refreshing when you, like, if I see a guy like me or a gal like me who says I've never done this before, but I'm willing to do it for you, guess what? I see a little bit of myself, and there's a lot of people who have done that. And so that's so important what you just said, echoing that. Be honest. I think a lot of us now feel a little bit like, man, this guy's got 100 units. This guy's, it's getting a little crazy that you're like, you might add a zero on your shit. For what? And now that guy that could have helped you, or gal, is actually not going to help you because they don't even see a little bit of themselves in there. Anybody who's done something great started from scratch, and it was pretty scrappy in the beginning. So you're actually, by being vulnerable, you're giving yourself an opportunity for someone to lend out their hand and help you. And that's a good reminder, because sometimes in this space, you know how it can be. You try to be a little bigger than you really are, which means you might miss an opportunity, or you might miss the opportunity for somebody to help you. So I really appreciated you saying that, man.
It's not on you to determine why that person will help you. People make up stories. Well, he's not going to help me. How fuck you know if a dude that has 10,000 units wasn't, he didn't know Sam Walton, and Sam Walton was like, hey bro, here's how it's going to go. And I'm just, because I'm reading this book right now, it popped in my head. But what I'm saying is, like, it's not on you for determine why the mentor is going to help you. It's not. Like, here's what I love to do. Really fuck with them. That's my favorite thing to do. I'll get a DM from, like, a fucking 18-year-old or 19-year-old. They're like, dude, love the podcast, love the content. I'll fucking call them on Instagram, and they're like, oh, like, we didn't even, like, know you were gonna respond. I'm like, no, bro, I'm calling you right now. I'm, like, in Florida, driving through Florida, and he's like, you're fucking talking to me right now? And I'm like, yeah, dude. Like, what can I do, man? Let's fucking go. And, like, because I think about it, right? How much that would make me fucking jazzed up, man, bro. Dude,
I love that. Hey, man, that's one of my motivations. Like, this is why I really resonate with Gary, because he has that raw, like, he's not like a bigger than himself. And for me, I know, like, I've gone to these places and I understand, like, the proximity thing, like shaking someone's hand and being like, yo, and I want to be that. Like, I want to be accessible. I want to be like, you know what's interesting? I had a coach tell me, and this is fucking wild, bro. And I don't think about it enough, and I should. You know what's fucking crazy, bro, with all the content me and you are putting out? I'm fucking 38 right now. I'm 60 years old, bro. And I'm walking down the street in, like, Denver, and, like, some fucking dude runs up to me across the street and is like, motherfucker, I was high on some fucking crazy ass shit, down on my luck, and I saw your YouTube videos, I binged all your podcasts, and you changed my life. Bro, I'll fucking break down right there. And, like, that's where I go when I'm like, I don't want to. I'm like, dude, if it catches one person, because here's what I can control. I can't control how it lands with you or when it hits you. I can control my actions in the movement, which is put it out there. Like, every time that you think you don't want to, you put it out there, and like, boom, you get that, like, okay. And, like, don't get me wrong, as content creators, there's some times where you're down on your shit, and like, every time when you're about to, like, pull the plug, it's like the universe, like, gives you that, like, little inkling, like somebody texts you and they're like, we felt it, like, you know, and I'm like, all right, we're back. Yeah. But Austin, you know what's crazy about that too? That's, like, what we see. Like, there's so many people who are not hitting the like button, who are not subscribing, who are not doing a damn thing with it, who are like, wow, that sat with me. And so if we go by, that's another thing too, like this whole numbers thing, man. And I'll mention Gary again, and maybe that'll be my last reference. But he said he had this thing where it's, 1 is greater than 0. Mm-hmm. And I was like, ooh, I love that. And his whole thing was like, man, you're over here and you're like, oh man, it's only got 12 views. 12 views? My first meetup had 0 people. Then when it started getting he's like spit out his water. Then when I started getting traction, it was like 6, 8, 12. That's 12 people, man. That, you know how insane that is? Like, we take that shit for granted.
Yeah.
8
you know what's,
people?
You know what's
one
interesting?
Life? 12?
You know what's interesting? Be careful that the life that you dreamed of, you're not currently living.
Oh, can you unwrap that, man?
Be careful that the life that you longed for and dreamed of, you're not currently living. We're always on to the next thing. Tell me how excited you would have been before you started that meetup if 8 people would have shown up. You've been like, this shit is the tits.
I'm like, shit, I didn't make it.
and then you get to the 8 and you're like, this is fucking terrible. Because I'm guilty. So
I just learned this. It's called hedonic adaptation. You probably know this because you're in this space. And we need to be very careful. Like, I have a gratitude list right now. Like, I have a roof over my head. I got a mic. I got a light. I got a ring light, y'all. Because you know my dark skin shit. If I don't have this out here, man, you might not be able to see me. So I got to stay lit. So not everybody has that. I got water. You and I keep drinking water. We're in the top percentile, man. This is wild.
Yeah.
Like, we are, like, seriously, like last episode we couldn't do because you didn't have any heat.
Yeah. Or water.
That's a real thing, man. And so what happens is, but yeah, we get used to that. On to the next one. And who was I having this conversation with? I think it was my fiance, man. I was like, man, like this, I think it's like a balance between like being like wanting more and being like ambitious, but being extremely present and being like, yo, we made it like a long way. Like but like every little thing, like I'm talking about like your phone, I'm talking about your family, I'm talking about food. Like I got dinner like that's being made right now. I got the people in my life. Yeah. I got a team, like you got a coach like Austin, like just these little things. You should write them down. I mean, you probably have a lot of great ways you're helping your community, but I just feel like that's a thing where we're so ungrateful for this because I think it's the instant gratification thing. I talked about Googling and YouTubing things really quickly. So we're so used to getting things so quickly, man.
Well, you know what's interesting? I did a rant. I recorded a rant today. Yeah. Motherfuckers, I'm about to get lit. I done like fucking 10 podcasts.
Shit, you done got
motherfuckers are walking around like they ain't gonna die. Like, what the fuck are you doing? Yeah. And you're bitching because dude, motherfuckers during COVID after like 4 months were bitching because they watched all the Netflix movies. Go like, dude, let me tell you something. Work. I'll give you what I told my fucking first client this week at 6 a.m. Motherfuckers finishing up entrepreneur school. He got like 4 assignments left, like 2 weeks. I was like, how old are you? He's like, I'm 23. I was like, oh yeah. And you were an alcoholic and a drug addict and now you're sober and over here bitching about your fucking school assignments. I was like, drink a motherfucking bang. I was like, 12 cups of coffee and let's knock this shit the fuck out and move on with our day. And he was like, damn, dude. I'm like, you acted like you're 70 years old and you need to go to bed. Like, pull it together, dude. Yeah. And sometimes the thought of what could be keeps us from being.
Oh, so well said, Austin.
And I just made it up right in the middle. So what's interesting is that, look, the relentless, aggressive pursuit of action and 12 Zoom calls a day and podcasts is not for everybody. But I promise you, if you push yourself just a little bit harder and you work on that side business or you do something that you're scared of, you know, there's a story, Lewis Howell tells it very clearly. He was very shy with women and he wasn't a good dancer. His motherfucker's like 6'5", and he started taking salsa lessons and he wound up like going to the best salsa club. Like he flew to Rio de Janeiro, like the fucking salsa capital of the world. And he's like, yeah, he's like 6 foot white guy out with like this Colombia's just fucking cutting shit up. And then he's like, went down and he started dancing with like the best dancer there. And guess what? Like, he has no fear anymore. And like, he took his fear, like the one thing that was holding him back, and he looked it in the face and he shook that son of a bitch and he said, fuck you, I'm going to conquer you. And every time you do that, every time you push back something, you level up. And so it's, but we're not doing that in society because we love comfort. Like, we've created this comfort.
I'm so glad you touched back on this, because I remember you said it earlier and I wanted to touch on it. I think there's a really good quote I saw out there, and I'm probably not going to be able to paraphrase it or quote it the best way, but it was something along the lines of, people are afraid to get started because they're afraid of being seen not being good at something. Right? Like people want to just be like that overnight success, like that. They want to skip the process part, and they don't want to seem struggling. Like, hey bro, how's that first deal going? Hey man, like it's still going. That's part of that process, like that learning process of like failing. And I think part of it is because it's kind of a combination we've been talking about. We see so much people winning of the end product that it puts that pressure of like, shit, like I don't want to lose right now because I don't want to be a loser. But the thing is, like, that's the end result. So if we can get that as a key takeaway, like that's the destination that you're seeing from a lot of people who took years. And that's what I want to get to, because I think like sometimes like, even like, oh man, I've met some young cats, man, who are like really crushing it. And it's like, fuck. It's like, bro, like, damn, bro, you making me look bad out here, cuz you're like 19 and shit. You got 3 fucking big ass companies, like whatever it is, it's all relative, right? Like it's really all relative. You look at McDonald's, dude, homeboy started at 54. Like you look at, there's just a lot. So don't put that pressure on yourself and then try to compare yourself, because that's just, you're going to go down a bad rabbit hole and you're going to want it fast. And I think you can get it fast if you put the things in place, but that doesn't usually happen too quickly. Like there's a process, because I will say that now in this day and age, if you can have the right relationships, make the right connections, it can happen fast. But you got to put in that work. You got to be like the awesome, like, okay, this guy does this guy does that, this guy does that. Okay, let me add value. Like you got to overdo the work, and then it can happen fast for you, but you still gonna have to fail. You're still gonna have to say, I don't know. You're still gonna be like, look like an idiot sometimes. That's happened. And shit, you're gonna have to go through the process, man. So thank you for bringing that. Like,
I couldn't agree more. And not to pivot too much, but I've been saying this quote all day, and I want to drop it on you so I don't forget, because I think you'll take, this will be your takeaway for the thing, because it sums up America in a thing. George Bernard Shaw said the single biggest problem with communication is the illusion that it's actually taken place.
So okay.
That's life. The single greatest problem with who you are and what you're doing is that you believe that you've asked for what you want. You haven't. You haven't pushed yourself. And you know what's interesting? I love doing business with military people and people who have been through drug addiction, because there's no fucking off switch with those. Like, they're so happy to be drug free that it's like, oh, it's a motherfucking Tuesday, we skipping. Like, fucking, they just don't give a shit, because that attitude, right? That happy attitude, that push forward, like, let's just go more is infectious. And like, I'll be honest with you, one of the things we're playing with right now that I think will be like change the world is I want to do entrepreneurship houses. And I want to do like 3-month stays where we fly speakers in, and you have a chef and a trainer, and everybody has their own room, and you have a scoreboard there, and you like give away prizes every week. And like, could you imagine the businesses and the amount of work you could get done around that environment? Like that incubator. Yes, like, incubator. Like, you know, I'll be honest with you. I just had an idea. we were talking about doing a mastermind event, right?
Yep.
I changed my mind. All right, here's what we're gonna do instead, because it's my favorite show in the world. Let's go to Atlanta, and I'll raise the money. I don't even care. I'll find the company. Let's get a grant in place, and let's do Shark Tank.
Tell me more.
So we'll get a panel, me, you, and some other entrepreneurs. We'll be the judges. We'll get a grant from a couple different companies, and we'll gift the winner of the Shark Tank a grant to start their business. That gets me fired up, doing stuff like that.
Really interesting.
Like, how fun is that? And then your company could give away like 60 days of like branding and marketing. Like, and I can give away my coaching. Like how great would it be able to give that gift to somebody? Like, that's the kind of stuff. Like, people think that I want to make a ton of money to like fucking tell people to fuck off and shit like that. What I want to do is I want to give it back. Like, I want my time to be my own. And that's why I'm after this thing. Like, because my why is impact. Well, how can I do that? Well, I can do it from a position of strength, or I can do it from a beggar. Well, I think I'm going to do it from a position of strength because I can help more. And so if your mechanism for why you're doing stuff is greater than the actual sum of where you're trying to get, then it's easy to wake up every day at 4 a.m. It's easy to push past that workout. It's easy to go through the 10 Zoom calls, because this thing that we're doing right here and what you're doing for your company and getting other people's messages out is bigger than you and I. Yeah. And we're playing an infinite sum game. And so if we're playing an infinite sum game and my why is so big, how can you fucking beat me?
That's real.
It's the truth. Because, and I'm not saying you don't get mad, because I'm sure you do. But every time I see you and every time I talk to you, you're so damn fucking happy. Like, and it's because you're so ingrained in the process that you have somewhat divorced yourself from the outcome. Like, who I'll be when I get there is who I'm actually going after, not when I get there. And people need to understand that.
Yeah, and it's funny. I was just talking about this, about the whole happiness thing, because it was tying back down to the whole gratefulness thing. And with your audience, I think you'll appreciate this too. Is I think happiness is definitely a choice, man. And we're not really. I think you may have given me the book. Like, there was a happiness book. I forgot who wrote it. I think we were talking about this, man. But it was. You have to make a choice to be happy, like in the process. And I think that starts with if you start writing down and kind of going back to the exercise of like what you're grateful for, it's hard to be frustrated and upset when you're writing on that list. Just try it. Like, if you're writing down what you're grateful for, that energy is completely shifted. So if you start that early in the morning, as soon as you get up, you do a gratefulness, it's hard to write a gratefulness list and then be like, oh man, I got this paper due. Like, what, dude? You're grateful for just everything. You're sleeping. Like, some people can't sleep. Like, there's so many little things you need to be grateful for. It's like, when you stub your toe and it's like, all of a sudden you're like, God damn, I didn't know I used my toe this much. Like, just think about that for a second, from a breathing level, from a functional level, from like life is really a miracle. So I think if you put things into perspective, because people are going to say, yeah, but that's obvious, right? Like, there's always levels of, if you're in a position, even breathing, right? Like, that's something to be grateful of. And I know that kind of sounds like some people are like, okay, all right, you got it, Ruben. Like, come on, bro. Like, but not really. Like, if you really start practicing that, I think you can kind of just take a deep breath, realize where you're at, and be like, yo, like, you kind of like what you said. Like, we're not gonna live forever, man. Well,
it's a simple word. I'm a word ninja, and I catch people as my favorite thing to do. I can be across the room and I'm like, don't do that. Instead of saying I have to, say I get to. I get to be on this call. I get to help people. It's just that little shift, but it kind of gives you what you need. So if people want to find out more about what your company does, they want to find out more about how to follow your journey in the podcast, how would they do that?
Hey, man, hit me up on the Instagram. Shoot me a DM. I actually do respond. And of course, it's called the Real Estate Experiment. And then for my company, we help podcasters who are thought leaders or who are aspiring, even if it's your first podcast, we'll help you, right? It's kind of like mine. We help them kind of repurpose their podcast so that they can tell the story of their guests and even their brand on multiple platforms. And again, I was going to say this earlier. We do this because I genuinely believe wherever you are in the world, if you're trying to get into a career, a business, a new industry, if you start a podcast, you can literally get access to people that you could really, there's no other way. Like telling somebody to come on your show is a flattering thing. So if you haven't already started your podcast, it doesn't matter how many episodes you're shooting per year, per month, or, you don't have to be like Austin, that you're just crushing it in the industry when it comes to podcasting, but use it as a mechanism to network and to learn and to interview people for free. So that's what we do, and we can help you with that. That's it. Invested.talent.com. And then to your listeners, to whoever's listening, we'll make sure if you email us in or you reach out to us and you put in Construct Your Life, we'll make sure we take care of you, cut that onboarding fee in half for you. How about that, Austin?
I love it. That's what I always coming with the value. You know what's interesting? I was talking to a buddy the other day who was asking about podcasts. This is how crazy podcasting's got. He's a landman. Do you even know what that is?
I don't.
Okay, it's a Texas thing where they go around and they lease land out for oil rigs and natural gas drilling.
Okay.
And he was like, they're in the car for hours driving through Texas, and there's like a bunch of landman podcasts. So it's like telling stories and stuff. So like, dude, you can start a podcast about anything, man. You just get on there and talk, share your story. Somebody's listening. Doesn't matter if it's one. Doesn't matter if it's 1, 2, 3. It doesn't matter. So, guys, if I got to do this right. Hold on. Ruben's always coaching me. I gotta do this outro right this time. Guys, if you like this episode, make sure you rate us and review us. We really appreciate all the reviews that you have. And if you haven't clicked on the subscribe button, make sure that you click on the subscribe button, please. We really would appreciate that. Thank you so much. It's the first time I ever. Austin. It's the first time I ever did that.
I'm so happy you did that, guys. Go and show Austin some love because this guy's crushing it. And the reason he's doing this is I always say you got to leave with a call to action. Lead the people, man. Hey, man, Austin deserves all the love. Listen, stop right now. It takes 2 seconds. If you've been listening to this podcast, go and help the brother out. He is crushing it on his very own podcast.
We're at 84. I need to get over 100. Come on.
Oh, let's get it, man. Drop it.
Yeah. So here's how great this interview is. I'm releasing this on Facebook tonight. People need to hear it. I don't care. So at the end of the day, we could do this a million times over. But guys, make sure you send this podcast to a friend, and we appreciate y'all for listening.
Appreciate you for having me.
Thank you for listening to Construct Your Life with Austin Linney. If you enjoyed this episode, be sure to rate, review, subscribe, and pay it forward by sharing with a friend. Most importantly, take this opportunity to start constructing your life by taking immediate action on what you learned. For show notes, resources, and more information on one-on-one coaching with Austin, visit constructyourlifepodcast.com.